first civilization to inhabit these cavernous halls, and in their ancient tongue of Dwemer, this place is called Val Zardum Din, which translates into the blackest kingdom reaches. And as you can no doubt see, that is a very appropriate name. It's not all pitch blackness, however, because as you can see, these caverns are lit by the pale bioluminescence of massive cave fungi sprouting as mushrooms from the ground and hanging as fungal stalactites from the ceiling. And their glow is joined by the faint luster of luminous ore veins which dot the ceiling like stars spread across the night sky. For the ancient Dwemer who lived here, Blackreach served as a kind of civic hub, and it was afforded a high level of protection by Dwemer's stalwart guardians there, animunculi, or steam automatons, as they're known. This specimen here is best known as a dwarven sphere. It's currently curled up into its spherical locomotion mode, but at the sign of a threat, it pops open into an imposing defender. And as you can see, it's still functional after all these centuries. Many of the native species of this cavern have adapted themselves to be in some way bioluminescent. Even the very air itself is laden with countless glowing spores from the innumerable the subterranean ecosystem of Blackreach. This is a crimson nerd root, which, as you've probably guessed, is a very close cousin to the more common nerd root found scattered across the surface of Tamriel. The Dwemer who built these incredible underground machines and cities were unparalleled mechanics. The technology which they devised and implemented is unmatched even to this day. And the tragic part is that it was all lost with the Dwemer when they disappeared. Certainly there are scholars at places like the College of Winterhold and in the Imperial City who study the technology and the ways of the ancient Dwemer. But so little is known. So much of their technology, their society, and culture remains shrouded in darkness. These days, Blackreach is inhabited by much simpler beings. The former slaves of the Dwemer, known as the Falmer. The Falmer were once a great and proud race of snow elves, but they made a terrible bargain with the dwarves. very specific purpose. And that purpose was often warfare. The Dwemer were a largely cruel and warlike race. And if they weren't at war with another nation or race, they were often at war with themselves. Civil infighting was commonplace. Items like this giant lamp, gas lamp, torch, however, are a little less obvious in their function, but no less beautiful for that fact. Enigmatic devices like this leave us wondering if we really, truly understand who the Dwemer were, what their lives were like. Blackreach is full of such unexplained pieces of technology and architecture, and there are very, very few scholars who have been down into the depths of Blackreach and made it out alive. Chances are we'll never know the function of the majority of the artifacts scattered throughout this cavern. Here we appear to have yet another example of Dwemer ingenuity. Some kind of luminous beacon, no doubt intended to light an area, but its glow appears to emanate from a flame, which even after all these centuries is still burning. And here we have another of the fearsome steam centurions standing guard, awaiting activation to be loosed upon intruders. And this appears to be the lever by which one could bring the centurion to life. Certainly best to leave that unactivated. Wouldn't want to tangle ourselves here just outside what the Dwemer called the Silent City, and it appears to have a moat of sorts. In fact, there's quite a bit of water in Blackreach, and although I don't believe the geology has ever been formally surveyed, I would venture a guess that most of these caverns were carved out over millennia by flowing water, eroding the rock until these massive caves had formed. No doubt it was many centuries more, or millennia more, before these caves were colonized by the fungi we see here today. And many centuries beyond that, when the Dwemer first inhabited these halls. This structure ahead looks like it could have served as some kind of temple or religious monument. And although we know very little about Dwemer beliefs and philosophies, we do know that they scorned conventional religion and instead worshipped the concepts of logic and rationality. But who really knows what this structure could have been? And here we have one of the Fulmer inhabitants of Blackreach, which I mentioned earlier. The Fulmer are what remain of the once proud civilization of the Snow Elves. The Snow Elves used to inhabit Skyrim until they were chased out by invading Nords in ancient times. They hid underground and looked towards the Dwemer for amnesty, but the Dwemer betrayed them, deceived them. They fed them toxic fungi, which made them all blind, and they turned them into their slaves. Eventually, the Fulmer rose up against their former masters, and for many, many years, the Fulmer and the Dwemer fought viciously back and forth, skirmishes in the deep darkness below the world, until one day the Dwemer simply disappeared. That was around And since that time, the Fulmer have been the lords and masters of the great underground complexes left behind by the Dwemer. The exact nature of the disappearance of the Dwemer race remains one of the greatest mysteries in all of Nern. But one thing we do know is that the entire race, nearly every single Dwemer, disappeared in an instant, left this plane. Theories as to why mostly involve around the Dwemer's tampering with the heart of a god, but nobody knows for sure. All we know for certain is that the Dwemer disappeared from this world, and they left behind their unfathomable technology and their magnificent ruins. Ruins such as this right here. This is the Silent City. It's the culmination of the Dwemer's efforts here in Blackreach, and it's illuminated by a luminous golden orb suspended from the ceiling of the cavern. The Silent City was no doubt a place of great importance for the Dwemer many, many years ago. But today, as with so many other ruins scattered throughout subterranean Skyrim, the Silent City is now a bastion for the Fulmer and their thralls. Here we have another Fulmer standing guard, looking out from the ramparts of the Silent City across the inky depths of Blackreach. Despite the fact that the Fulmer have lost so much and devolved so far from their proud snow elf ancestors, they still do pose a threat to the inhabitants of the surface world. And in fact, they do take slaves. Those who are unlucky Legend has it that the great artificial golden sun, which lights the silent city, is in fact powered by the soul of a captured dragon. I don't know if this is fact or fable, but I personally have no intention of finding out. Instead, I think